All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us on Daybreak. We'll be diving right into our discussion segment. Now, the World Bank's concessional arm, the International Development Association, or IDA, a brand new financial report just released by the institution, lays bare the staggering speed of our borrowing. Now, let's put that into perspective, In just 1 year, from the end of 2024 to December 31st, 2025, Nigeria's debt to the IDA surged by $1.9 billion. That is an 11.3% jump in just 12 months. Now you might ask, why does this specific debt matter? Because these are the cheap loans, the concessional loans meant to be a financial lifeline for developing countries. But our reliance on them is growing so fast that Nigeria is now the third largest borrower in the entire IDA portfolio, sitting just behind Bangladesh and Pakistan. Now, it means that as the federal government tries to navigate a turbulent global economy and a tightening fiscal space at home, we are leaning heavily on multilateral loans to stay afloat. But the question remains, at what point does reliance become a trap? To analyze the details of this new report and what it means for our national budget and your pocket, we're joined in the studio by an economist, Yusha'u Aliyu. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Welcome, Yusha.
Thank you. All right, I'll start from the basics. Now, the World Bank, as we've just said, latest figures show Nigeria's concessional debt has increased by roughly $1.9 billion in just 1 year, making it one of top IDA's borrowers globally, which is now Nigeria's the third. So how do you interpret this escalation in the context of Nigeria's broader fiscal strategy, and what specific development objectives are driving this surge in multilateral borrowing?
When you look in the larger context, you look at borrowing, you have to know your rating in the first instance, because most of the economies of the world depend on one international financial organization or the other. Second, domestic debt is also adding value to several economies, including emerging economies. But what is more important at any point in time is what are the economic measures you are undertaking at a particular time, because you have to test a different hypothesis. The first one that is glaring to every Nigerian is that we have high deficit in infrastructure, high deficit of income, when you continue to count deficit, then definitely, if you don't have a good strategy to generate more internally generated revenue, then that definitely the compound of any multilateral or domestic engagement in debt definitely will be consuming the little value you are adding in terms of revenue generation, and it becomes a problem. But when you also engage in multilateral borrowing for concessionary period or for concessionary arrangement, then definitely you have to also know the value at which you are putting the risks, because no economic journey, no economic decision that doesn't have its own risks and associated gains.
Okay, talking about risk, what are the main risks associated with the high share of World Bank IDA loans in Nigeria's external debt portfolio?
And you have to first of all look at the GDP rate of the economy. You have to also look at the revenue generation, and you also look at the best policy options to stabilize prices in the economy, because the essence of putting additional value in terms of resources to an economy is to engineer the GDP growth. And that perspective alone will lead you to now find what is even the total debt that is within the economy, and what is the rating of that debt to our revenue. That's the first perspective. The second perspective is also look at the direction of the economy, meaning that, like I said, we have deficit in education, deficit in road, deficit. Then what are the priorities of the government at a particular time? Even when you consider probably some economic decision, including reforms that is being embarked upon by different economies. But when you look at the categorization, you will realize that the global debt rating in general, Nigeria is number 62nd, while the first country in the world that is on this profile is United States with over 35 trillion US dollars. But what is the size of the debt of Nigeria? The size of the debt is above 40 billion US dollars. So even if you are to take the ratio of 35 trillion and then 40 billion for a country that has nearly similar challenges in terms of GDP, do you understand? You now realize that Nigeria is at an advantage looking at the reform that is being placed on table, but it is not convenient.
All right, now you spoke about debt to GDP ratio. Now, according to the World Bank, Nigeria has, or the World Bank has projected a decline when it comes to debt to GDP, which the ratio is now below 40%. Now, looking at the recent physical debt, Nigeria's debt servicing, let's look at Nigeria's debt servicing, which is very important. Now, it has increased sharply, exerting pressure on physical balances in the country. Now, to what extent is Nigeria at risk of borrowing to service existing debts rather than to finance productive investment? And what macro policies should be prioritized at this point for Nigeria?
At this point, when you take a perspective of the direction of the economy reform, and you don't look debt to GDP and debt to IGR, that's the revenue. These are very, very, very fundamental. The fiscal reform that is going is an attempt to stabilize fiscal measures and monetary measures, our measures in terms of spending. When you look at the size of our budget in the last 3 years, you will see an increasing trend to above 50 trillion naira. And when you look also the size of our debt servicing, which is increasing, and the risks that that is associated in increasing our debt servicing is that it will continue to consume the little contribution we are making in terms of payment of taxes. Your taxes, my taxes, the listeners or the viewers' taxes. These taxes we are giving them not to service debt. We are giving them to put our infrastructure in the right train. So these are the challenges, and policymakers have to understand also the need to carefully study or understudy some debt concept. Let me give you an instance. Now, multilateral loans in the last 2 years, as you highlighted in the background, we have seen a change, a trend. But what is more important to this economy as at present is that we are trying to stabilize prices in the economy. And we are trying at the same time to capitalize the banking sector. And this capitalization of banking sector, it is done to improve the efficiency of our local production from all angles. But if otherwise, I put this one, our debt servicing is increasing, and as a result of that increase is swallowing our IGR, then we have to look two issues. One, where are we banking to service our debt? Foreign or domestic? So, but good for Nigeria at this time, we are putting our direction to service the deficit from within market, within the economy, but that also has its own associated risks, because the capitalization, let me give you an example. It's international merchant banks. Their target by 31st of March is $500 billion institutions. So when you have that kind of institution, so now there is no need for bank for the economy. Instead of issuing bonds, issuing securities that have more longer effect, you concentrate in the capital market, but concentrating in our also local domestic market also put risks for investors from agri, from power, from small business that will now take the advantage of going directly into this market and then put some level of efficiency. You can only understand this one if you look at the context of what Dangote Refinery is doing today.
Right.
But this Dangote refinery, what it's doing today, the finances did not emanate from the local domestic economy, because all the banks at that time, no bank can produce $19 billion to him, and even conglomerations of banks, because of their capital extent. So, but now, if the capitalization is successful, we are expecting our refineries not to go to financial market outside the economy.
All right, now looking at this debt that Nigeria has collected from the International Development Association and what is meant to be used for. Now, these funds, if we look at it, I would like to ask what the disadvantage of not utilizing those funds that have been collected for what they are meant to. We know that it is meant to be used for national development, exactly, infrastructural or any kind of development that would propel Nigeria. So what are the long-term disadvantages of that? A couple of factors, as well as how it would affect, Nigeria when it comes to, you spoke about servicing debt as well. Now, some of these projects are supposed to be revenue generating projects, and they do not materialize. So what are the biggest disadvantage of that to the country and its economy?
Yeah, in an economy, we don't like much of the usage of disadvantage. We call it as it is, the risks associated, or the burden.
The risk of not
in the economy.
Yes, because if there is one macroeconomic analysis, individual choice and its consequences. So if we choose to borrow, it has a consequence. And that consequence is shifting the burden in the short term and in the long run. And how does that shift the burden? It shifts, if you don't have a stable economy, and if you don't have an efficient economy where resources are generated, then all the effort you have been doing to pay as you earn, and you pay your value added in all the consumable goods around the economy, you are paying it to better your life. And if you pay all those, because one of the fundamental of tax issue is that the principle of quid pro quo, the principle of returns benefit, we are paying taxes for our lives to be better. We are not paying taxes for somebody outside the economy to be better, to be counting profit. So these are the risks associated of additional borrowings, which is not subject to consideration of the economic environment, the policy adjustment, and also the priorities of the economy. The priorities now must be put to the aspect of advantage that we are driving from the expanding. For instance, when you check our GDP, you realize that the service sector is leading. Why? And it's not supposed to be the service sector leading the economy all the time. We want productive sectors that has larger multiple value chain, like agriculture, to be leading. Because if agriculture is leading, agriculture is multifaceted. You see people and you see value chain. And not only value chain, we now reach a level at which we scale the economy to food security economy, where you check your rating at the same time. If you go to food security, for instance, you see the rating of Nigeria. Out of 113 countries, Nigeria is 103. And people are shouting, we are secured. We are not secured. And what are the things that are measured to confirm your food security? Don't just look food in the market and think that there is enough food, or you put a pyramid of rice somewhere and you say you have food. No. What that concept of food security entails is that the food itself must be available, not in the market, but in our homes. And it must be price reasonable, that we can buy at any time, and it must have quality and safety. So these are the combinations that we should be looking to put our economy to efficiency level.
Okay, earlier you started talking about exchange rate sensitivity, and just divert a little bit. So let me bring you back to that.
No problem.
Much of the recent rise in debt stock is attributed to naira devaluation rather than new borrowing. Now, what strategic shift should the DMO especially take to protect our debt profile from further currency volatility?
The debt service institution has a role to play. But what plays a role greater is our Fiscal Responsibility Act, because these are the laws that even allow us to go to borrowing market and then add to our revenues. But let me tell you, some of the things that are positive in this economy. One is by the time we began to have a stable foreign exchange, and by the time Naira is also appreciated. I'm a living witness from Friday, just Friday last week, dollar to Naira was 1,410. And yesterday it was 1,350 Naira.
But it goes up and down.
It goes up, but there are factors that have influenced that. And those factors are not falling from sky because they are not natural. They are man-built. The intervention of the central bank to create 150,000 windows to bureau the change is at the base. So, but what we economists always calling is that if you are to build, if you are to build your economic efficiency without borrowing, then definitely you have to put it as a political will to begin to dissociate, because it is not every priority that you require funding from concessions or interventions or loans. Let me tell you, why do we go to international market to borrow money just to share as proceed to feed ourselves? We don't need that. The critical investment that we know that we are very deficient in is a deficit. These are the and not only that, political office holders and policy design managers must also understand that if you are to control the entire debt profile of a state, you don't limit it only to the national. You take it to subnational to check their excesses. And at the same time also, there is proactive decision to boost recapitalization, like I said earlier. Once we recapitalize our banking sector, and I think part of the projection in 2026 fiscal year is that the debt, 80% will be sourced domestically. And if you are sourcing 80% domestically, then it means that our capital or our financial institutions are ready to give their contribution to what we are looking for, our GDP growth to about 4.6.
Okay, Nigeria is owing $18.7 billion. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Do you think Nigeria now has the ability to pay back? And if they do, what ways do you think they can actually follow to pay back those loans?
You see, before paying back, you have to moderate. We look to put efficiency in moderation. And that's why I said the national, the subnational, the debt service office has to look at different capacity of economy. We are not the same. The whole economy that is at the subnational, you look at, there are things that are not even required for international financial intervention. So these are some of the things to put moderation. But Nigeria has the capacity to pay even beyond 40 billion. But the problem is, where is the revenue? No Nigerian, naturally, individuals have tax apathy. Nobody wants to be paying tax. But there are a lot of tax base that if it is exploited better, we generate bigger and more reliable funds for our development purposes. And once we are putting this trajectory, we don't have to look at, because of the new reform that has unified most of the taxes, we need to know that this is the time to have taxes, this is the time to have liquidity, this is the time to control liquidity, this is the time to make advances, and this is the time to even address under Fiscal Responsibility Act any additional burden in terms of borrowing into our economy.
All right. Now, you spoke about projects that are meant to be done with those funds that have been borrowed. Now, looking at it with all these debts, how should debt finance infrastructure products be evaluated against, the expected returns? Should there be stricter cost-benefit thresholds before taking a new external loans?
Experts from the Debt Management Office must always try to translate the efficiency of any borrowing, not just to be keeping figures, because it is time to join forces of the Bureau of Statistics, the Debt Management Office, and also the Fiscal Responsibility to continue to evaluate what the values of what is coming into the economy, the contribution to the economy, and also whether to continue on that trend or not to. You see, if anytime you see a word that is, for instance, from the family background, anytime you see somebody from crèche to nursery to secondary school and also to university to the first class is evaluated under, and an economy is simple. You use stochastic analysis. These are models that test whatever advantage that you are taking from embarking on any economic decision, including debt.
All right. Now, with World Bank accounting for a large share of Nigeria's external obligations, how do multilateral concessional loans terms compare with commercial borrowing in mitigating rollover and refinancing risks?
Remember, nobody is out to give you loan to enter paradise. Let me put it like this. They are out to make money. So multinationals, they look at economy with potential. And the economy today, the World Bank is interested in Nigeria because they have seen all capacity in all aspects of our business environment. If you talk of refining capacity, you look at Dangote reality. If you look gas investment, if you look even communication. So, but what I think, in my own opinion, is that the World Bank will continue because we are members. And also members to IMF, they will continue to use Nigeria because of its influence and potentials. But it is going to be best for the nation, for us, for us as Nigerians and our policymakers to understand that we cannot continue to put our economy at risk of international monetary politics.
Now, as my colleague mentioned earlier, $18.7 billion is a lot of money. Now, how transparent has Nigeria's debt contracting and utilization processes been in recent years? Are there mechanisms ensuring accountability for debt-financed projects?
You see, that has to do with the responsibility of Debt Management Office. For you to ascertain, there are conditions, there are privileges, and there is law behind any international engagement. But it depends on areas of application and means of application. Let me give you a good, quick answer to that. When you take under international financial arrangement, you take SCOOC, for instance. Anywhere you go, you see SCOOC start here, SCOOC ends here. Why not apply to all debt, all debt associated projects? So that Nigeria will understand that if you say you have collected $30 million US from the Chinese government and invested in your rail, let it be written because we are the payers. And you are taking this liability on our behalf. So it is good to understand. Like I said, that's why there are these debt engagement that are with the subnationals, and they are unaccounted for. The recent case is once you look at what is going on between EFC and the former Kaduna State Governor. So we are expecting much to be had so that we understand the accountability aspect that we are putting and also the reality on ground.
Okay, now tax to GDP is projected to rise slightly to 10.2% by 2026 this year.
Yeah.
So is this growth fast enough to outpace our borrowing cost, or is it more aggressive tax reform necessary?
Based on the rating, Nigeria is at a stable position, debt to GDP. So that increase is coming with an increase debt to revenue. And once you have this revenue in action, but I have been saying, not that now that we have Nigerian Revenue Service, now that the tax base has increased, now that the tax produce is unified, we should be careful in applying those advantage into the economy for two reasons. You cannot continue to be sharing from 580 billion naira monthly as FAC allocation to 2 trillion. And then you are taking our MPR higher at the central bank to control liquidity. While at the base, this aspect of our contribution is causing a lot of risks in terms of liquidity to the economy. And remember, once you put several economic indices or policies on ground, you are recapitalizing banks, you are increasing taxes, you are unifying taxes, and you are increasing sharing, and you want to control inflation. Definitely, at a certain age, if relative measures are not put together to stabilize them, we will end up wasting our time and then putting risks back to the economy, and it's going to affect everyone.
Now, we have seen that Nigeria is at the top of the list compared to other African countries. Now, definitely we would have to make a comparison. Now, compared with these peer African countries and other emerging markets, how does the Nigerian debt profile and term stack up? And is Nigeria borrowing, smarter or just more?
Yeah, when you take the indices of the fastest emerging economies in Africa, Nigeria is leading. And once you are leading, you cannot rest. Do you know why you cannot rest? Dangote did not rest, even being the richest African. He moved out to borrow and invest. But you have to, after investing, you have to also be strong. Africa, we have engaged Africa in different economic engagement, from OPTA agreement to West African agreement. But Nigeria is in a better position to borrow, to finance, to achieve the relative GDP growth that the economy is looking.
Okay, now, let's talk. Is there an alternative financing, so to say, what non-debt financing options, for example, public-private partnerships, diaspora bonds, could complement or replace external borrowing so that we don't even borrow at all?
They are not reliable. That's why sometimes you have to take an option for immediate cases. But what is reliable in terms of international financing is there are non-interest based finance institutions. Why not share prosperity with them? Why not put additional engagement with them? That's why I gave you an example of international financing through Skook. At the center of Abuja, Bola Ahmed Tinubu Way, when you go, you see where Skook stand and you see where Skook aim at the center. And if you go around the nation, you see Skook everywhere. So instead for us to go into where there are high interest rate and then high risks of debt is associated, we can shift our focus to institutions that are interest-free, more friendlier. We can have them within Africa. Nigeria is a member and a great sponsor of Africa Development Bank. We need to have this. Nigeria is also in an advantage today, joining BRICS. And this BRICS association, Nigeria being a partner, there is much to learn, there is much to gain, and there is much to achieve. So it is good that policymakers understand that first, too much borrowing is risking their political career, because the opposition always use things that are not well understood by general public and dwell on. And at the same time also, we economists were giving emphasis that, look, it is important that we should know that we are the signatories to World Bank, and therefore we must be operating with the one bank. The same thing applies to IMF. We are signatories to all the agreement there. And that's why you see that we cannot sit without going there. So there is need for us as a nation to put a technical committee to review our commitment with this institution, and at the same time also to look at other possible options in the same financial market that are scattered around the globe.
All right. Now, you made mention that Nigeria should look at options and looking at other bodies that can provide debts that are interest-free or with reduced interest. And you just said that Nigeria is, should I say, involved with the IMF and the World Bank as well. Now, what role should institutions like the World Bank and IMF play in balancing development support with debt sustainability, making it easier for countries to be able to pay their debt? And should their lending criteria be revisited for countries with fragile revenue profiles?
In my own, you see, it is once international monetary engagements are concerned, you look at your international engagement with different economic bodies. That's why I gave emphasis to BRICS. BRICS is an option. Russia invested their currency in yuan, over $140 billion. That is why Vladimir Putin is extending influence everywhere in the world. Our potentials must be used carefully in advancing our international financial transaction. Let me take you back 2023, where the NNPCL went ahead to put Nigeria in a bigger risk by borrowing and then putting oil production, the crude production of Nigeria, in a high risk with the Exim back. These are some of the things that we review them from time to time. And not only reviewing them, now put a fiscal cap to address mismanagement of that facility. Because we don't need to in a volatile crude oil market, now risk our production, risk our potential in trying to do non-economic value in the name of subsidy, which has finally been removed. But Nigeria is now paying heavy to that economic risk that we take.
Okay. From an economist viewpoint, which revenue mobilization reforms you think will most effectively offset the rising debt service burden?
No, we have taken the right decision. That is you look into your taxes, because no state function without tax, and also we limit our spending. We check our priorities. That's why I can still recall, assuming that we acknowledge and then put more emphasis to the budget option that was put behind National Assembly during Oshubanjo. That is a zero-based budget, a budget of priority, which was developed by Peter Peer. It's a good budgeting system that can control, first, they can control your excess expenditure commitment, and then put you at a more stable level to understand your IGR, to understand your deficit, and also to put the right application in between for GDP growth.
Okay. All right, now looking at the long-term fiscal architecture of Nigeria, besides borrowing, what structural reforms could meaningfully stabilize Nigeria's fiscal position over the next decade? For example, we have boosting non-oil exports, broadening the tax base, that we have seen, and digital revenue systems. Investment of the revenue proceeds in the critical infrastructure. If we invest in energy, we have covered a long-term effect to help sustain energy. And there are options to that. We can also invest in developing. We can invest in developing a manufacturing base of our agro-allied industries, which is highly needed, not only by Nigeria, but by the sub-region as well as the continent. And we now shift our focus, not trading directly with the outside world with the Europeans. We trade within Africa, which is more effective, because presently, if all Africans concentrate in developing their fiscal strategy within Africa, we have enough. In fact, we are the richest. We can develop. We have mining sector, we have agri sector, we have oil sector. Once we critically take the advantage we are taking, and it should be emphasized that each state that has a share of revenue from taxes must have a solid mineral base. Invest. If you carefully invest, in the next 10 years, you generate infrastructure, you generate employment, you increase the cash base, and you increase revenue, and at the same time, you are putting yourself outside the risk of borrowing again. And if you have that stable situation, you will see how life will improve, and you will see how efficient our economic life will be. It's not a rocket science. Even nation that doesn't have this advantage, we are able to put, using some extra commitment, to bring about what they don't have and then build capacity in it. We learn from Turkey. Turkey, Mr. President recently visited Turkey, and I can attest to you that if we take our energy reform and then take what Turkey has done,
then definitely with the intellect, we have the human capacity, we develop them. Because behind IMF, behind World Bank, the emphasis for all these gross statistics has to do with human capital development. And in human capital development, you develop people educationally, you develop their health sector, and you now develop their financial literacy. People to understand that this cocoa that I can grow in 10 years, it will produce not only to me, but to my generation. This palm tree, that if I put investment in it, it can develop not me, not my family, but my community. Long-term investment. And we all have the potentials. We all have the brain. But the only thing is that we need a direction and we need a technical team to put our special economic zones in order. And if you put the special economic zones in order, you set a good laboratory that will monitor the finances that is coming from Bank A, Bank B, Bank C, because after this recapitalization, some bank will have enough resources, but they will not know where to channel them. And we will leave them in the hands of politicians.
Okay, quickly, how can Nigeria now improve its debt management transparency and monitoring to reassure investors and citizens? Because from the citizens' end, they do not have this trust in the Nigerian government anymore.
Let us have a thorough analysis of our deficit. When we have a thorough analysis of our deficit, we also have thorough analysis of our revenues. Once we have that one, with the transparency that we are looking, we are not even going to borrow. We canvass on what we are generating, and we limit them. Well, you see, it's not every time you have wedding in Lagos, Kaduna, that you must go. There are weddings that you just need to call. So the same thing applies to economic sense. Not all investment you borrow money to invest. You take the ones that will give you value addition. And the value addition, like I told you, we look at the value chain industries, which will bring our people to have food on their table, to have work to do, to reduce crime, and at the same time also to expand the tax base. After expanding, the revenue will increase, then we'll bring it back again. And it is wrong. I gave this some time ago. I was telling one SA to the revenue service chairman. I said, look, please, why can't you, from the social corporate responsibility, these taxes that you are taking, a certain percentage, design a model to have a cancer, a diabetic center, and so health facilities around 6 geopolitical zone, and within them also, like this cook, put sponsored by Nigerian revenue, so people can see it. They can control childbirth delivery unit, sponsored by Nigerian revenue. People will have confidence in you. People will have confidence to pay more taxes. And the economy also will be friendly with whatever revenue that comes into it, and then spend within it.
Now, on another aspect, in your view, what medium-term microeconomic framework should Nigeria adopt to balance growth, debt management, and invest in human capital?
Project priorities involved. Once you don't have priority, you are going to crash, because whatever that comes to you, you are to let us have energy focus. I always be embarrassed when I saw federal budget, street solar light. If I see government street solar light, if I see corporate social responsibility, street solar light, and people don't have work doing. We have to balance our commitment with our resources, with efficiency. This is the only balance that we are looking. Balance our commitment, our resources with our economic challenges. Once we put them, and then it should be right spelled out. Education, Nigeria has enough universities today. We have enough secondary schools. But what value are we adding to the productions of this young generation that are coming out from this institution? These are the things we look into, give them IT. The next 10 years will be AI economy, and AI economy goes to agriculture, AI economy goes to media, AI economy goes to budget, AI economy goes to all aspects of our life. So let us bring experts who have a lot of potential in robotics, put them together, We need them for our security. We need them for agriculture. We need them for our day-to-day community dissemination of information. AI can do that.
All right. Thank you very much, Yusha'u Aliyu.
Thank you very much.
Shedding so much light on Nigeria's debt problem
Thank you very much, Awa.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be going on a quick break. When we come back, we'll be looking at the front pages of our national dailies and see what made it there. So make sure you stay tuned with us right here on Daybreak.